Welcome into Man vs. Machine, where we have the machine, Ed Feng, up against myself, Drew Martin, going over 3 college football games this week from a numbers and a gameplay perspective. So let's bring him in. Ed Feng, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good, except I find myself running around Tuesday mornings trying to pick up my dry cleaning. Knowing I got to do a show with you, and you're always well dressed with a collar. So no t-shirts here in the basement anymore. I'm all busy running around. Thanks, Drew.
Yeah, what's the shopping like in Ann Arbor? Is it a big city for like fashion and stuff like that?
I wouldn't say we're that fashion forward. We're laid back Midwest. But it's all right.
All right, down here in Costa Rica, it is kind of like a little different vibe. I mean, I try to throw on a collar from time to time doing shows. I figure in front of a camera, but
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Absolutely.
I'm not too big into fashion, so I appreciate the shout out, though.
But you look good with a collared shirt every time I've seen you. And what was Teddy Savransky was saying? He's never seen you not in a collared shirt, even though you stayed at his house for a while, right?
Yeah, just woke up and put on a collared shirt. Absolutely, man. Hey, I love the fashion talk, Ed, but it is a sports betting show, so we should probably get into it. We actually got some good games, man. But I did want to get your opinion on last week college football. What'd you think? Are you taking anything from what you saw or what your numbers saw last week and bringing it over to this week and betting this week's card?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have no idea what to think about Maryland's quarterback situation, which you pointed out when I was making that pick last week. So I'm a little cautious about that team. Otherwise, I thought, things went pretty well last week, in terms of picking. I thought the Georgia State game was something I really liked, and that worked out. And, just looking for those same teams again. We're not going to talk about Georgia State, but that doesn't mean we're not going to talk about them down in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just because we're not talking about them this week, you don't still have them on your radar. But last week, you brought up that Maryland game. You also you won on App State, you won on Georgia State, and you lost on the Maryland game. That was the one I won. UCF went 1-2 against you again. I'm about tapping out right now, Ed. You've gone 2-1 pretty much every week, so hats off to you on the success.
Hey, thanks, man. We're just going to try to keep it up. And you know what? Drew, you probably had some bad luck in some of those games, so I still value your opinion, and I like doing the show to hear what you got to say.
Yeah, and Ed, I want to follow up on that UCF Maryland game because I guess you could say you got lucky to a point. I actually lost on that total, which I think was reflected in the Maryland quarterback going down. It was already their backup, a highly touted kid, a dual threat type of quarterback, and then the third string quarterback comes in, and he looks like pretty much a deer in headlights, man. It was a totally different team. Right. And they only put up 10 points, I believe. They lost 38-10
right.
to UCF. How do you grade out those plays as far as you had a bet on Maryland and it lost? Do you really calculate that going forward as the wrong bet, or do you just kind of chalk it up as the quarterback went down and the third string pretty much just sucked?
I think it was the wrong bet. And the reason is I really thought Maryland was going to be able to run the ball on Central Florida. Central Florida had a great defense last year. I think they were top 25 in my numbers in terms of yards per play adjusted for strength of schedule. I thought they would. I think they lost some players on the defensive line. I expected them to regress a little bit, but they were clearly able to shut down a Maryland team that had been able to run the ball through the second half of last season and early parts of this season. So maybe that's my biggest adjustment. Central Florida, that defense might be pretty good again.
Yeah, and that brings up another point. I mean, Central Florida only went up against Maryland, which for the majority of their game had their third string quarterback that did not look good. And the only other game because of the hurricane was against FIU. Right. So I kind of view their defense as a really volatile figure as far as are they good, are they not good? I can't really tell. Right. How do you figure that in your numbers?
Yeah, I mean, my numbers, consider data from this year and kind of blends them in with what I have from a previous season. Clearly, this season gets weighted more. I think the jury's still out on Central Florida. They got a pretty good test with Memphis coming to town this week. So we'll look to see how that defense performs again against a pretty potent Memphis offense.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. 2 undefeated teams in the AAC. I wouldn't be surprised if the winner of that game wins the whole conference. But Ed, right. let's get into this week's card. We got a Friday night matchup and we got 2 Saturday matchups. One being the Hawaii game. I guess you could look at that as kind of like it will be heavily bet anyway. I believe it's going at midnight Eastern time on Saturday. But Friday night, we got a Pac-12 clash. Really good game. USC versus Washington State, 65 the total. Looks like Washington State's commanding -3.5. They opened up at 4, and it looks like USC actually took a little money. Even though it's a short week on the road, night game in Pullman, Washington, it's going to be a tough test for USC. Which way are you looking to bet this one, Ed?
Yeah, I'm looking for over 65.5. I think this is a story of two offenses that are pretty good and two defenses that I'm still not sure about. Actually, no, I'm pretty sure about Washington State's defense. I think it will look similar to what we've seen last year, about an FBS average type defense. I'm not convinced about USC's defense. We've seen them get gashed a couple times this season, even though that hasn't resulted in a loss yet. I run a model that takes a bunch of different data from the markets and what happens in the game in terms of yards per play. Predicts about 68 points in this game. And, I've been looking for a USC over since the season started because Sam Darnold is a pretty good quarterback. And I still have some questions about what that defense can do. And this is the week to do it.
Okay, and to come at you a little bit as far as it's a short week on the road for USC. And usually, that does affect the preparation time. You have one less day to prepare, sure, and the travel time for USC. Do you factor that in your model?
I don't. I guess it is one less day, but you're only really playing 12 hours before you normally would on a Saturday anyways. I understand that's one less week of practice, but it probably means the coaches are sleeping one less night during the course of the week. So, both teams played last Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. And so both of them kind of have a short week, probably cancels out. Not something I think really matters too much.
Okay, so going with the over of 65, which is pretty much across the board, right, Ed?
I believe so. I think I saw 65.5 somewhere. And one of the, I've been going against USC a lot this season. I called them overrated in an SB Nation article at the beginning of the season. Have been kind of cheering against Sam Darnold in that way. Stanford alum was cheering against him in that game as well, just for him to throw incompletion, which I think it took him almost a half to do. But he's a pretty good quarterback, and taking the over is an exciting chance to actually cheer for him instead of against him.
All right, so over USC, Washington State. Let's move on to the Saturday slate. We got a Sun Belt versus SEC matchup, 169, 170 on the rotation numbers on the betting card. We got Troy traveling to Baton Rouge, 49 the total across the board. This is one you want to look at SBR odds for to shop around for the best number at the sports book. Looks like we got Chris showing a -21 for LSU, the Greek -20.5. So Ed, this Sun Belt versus SEC matchup, I believe there's another one too with New Mexico State facing Arkansas. Which way are you looking to bet Troy LSU?
Yeah, I like the Troy side. I think LSU is a program that's not headed in the correct direction. I did not like the Ed Orgeron hire, a guy who won 3 SEC games at Mississippi in his previous head coaching job. LSU is still talented. They clearly have a talent advantage over Troy. I just think 20-21 is just too many points. And one of the reasons is that I've started doing these market rankings. So I take closing point spreads in the markets and I adjust for strength of schedule by my ranking algorithm. So it gives me a way of saying, oh, well, LSU was favored by so many points against Team B, and Team B was favored by so many points against Troy. So what should the spread be? When you work that kind of thing out. And it was interesting that market model actually predicted about a 17-18 point win for LSU. So even the market in and of itself, trying to predict itself going forward with my model, says this spread shouldn't be at 20. When I combine that with a couple other factors based on margin of victory and yards per play, my model says LSU should win by about 15. And so, Troy's a good program, has a great defense, has a senior quarterback. I think it's hard for LSU to cover that many points.
No, that's a great breakdown there. You bring up some good points. I guess I would come at you, Ed, with when you bring up points per play and things like that, we're comparing a Sun Belt team that I don't have who they've played right in front of me, but I'm sure it's not what LSU has played. So would you factor that in less?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what my math does really well. it accounts for strength of schedule. So it automatically uses the fact that LSU's played a much more difficult schedule than Troy. It counts the fact that Troy went up to Boise and gave them a game. All that stuff is in there with my math. And that's why I really like these out of conference games sometimes to make these comparisons. Also why I really like bowl games where you have teams from different conferences playing, because it gives a chance for the math to come through about how I adjust for strength of schedule.
Okay, good comeback. Had it covered, and no, I should have known that actually. So we got the over in USC Washington.
No,
What's that?
And let me just another point. Darius Geis, the running back from LSU, has been ruled out. I just checked that before we jumped on this show. At the end of the day, I don't think it matters too much. I think it just makes him slightly less explosive. So it's just that much less likely that they're going to break a rushing touchdown in the second half that lets them cover.
No, that's a good point. He's a good player. And also LSU's defensive line's real banged up. Dave Malinsky wrote about it in Point Blank this week. That, their rotation, usually when we think of LSU, they're rotating 8, 10 defensive linemen that can all get after it. This year's LSU team's a lot different. So I wouldn't be surprised if Troy put up a couple points there, Ed.
Yeah, I think so. I know you like Brandon Silvers.
Yeah, so, absolutely. So I like this Troy plus 21 as well. Hey, we got one more, the nightcap, the true nightcap. Hawaii at home, rotation number 207, 208, Colorado State Rams, Mountain West play at Hawaii Rainbows, the Rainbow Warriors, that is. Looks like Colorado State -7 at Jazz, -7.5 at Five Dimes, total of 70.5 at Chris at Bookmaker, and 70 pretty much across the board. We'll use 70 at Bet Online for the total. But Ed, so we got a big one. A lot of money is going to be bet on this, with people that are winning rolling their money over, and people that are losing trying to catch up there in the Hawaii game. So you looking to bet the side or the total in this one, Ed?
First of all, I do not recommend either of those two things that you mentioned. I think you should bet games because you find value in those games. I love the over. I think we've talked a little bit about Hawaii and how they're definitely an over team. An offense led by quarterback Drew Brown. They have a pretty great running back in St. Juice. And they have a defense that's not particularly good. Colorado State looks the same. The offense really took off last year with quarterback Nick Stevens. They were putting up a lot of points last season. It looks like they're continuing at that in the current season. And again, Colorado State has a defense that is not very good. So when I rank defenses, I do yards per play adjusted for strength of schedule. Both these defenses rank outside 100th. And they were there at the end of last season. And when I started incorporating data from this season, they're still outside of 100. I see a lot of points in this game. And I like over 70. What we say was 70. I think it moved up from 69 where it opened. And I just don't, it's not quite high enough.
Yeah, I'm not sure which openers you want to go off of, but I believe Bet Online even opened lower than that, and it has been bought up. Looks like we can get you a 70 at Bet Online right now. So taking the over, Colorado State, Hawaii. I also noticed in the Hawaii game last week, watching them against Wyoming, they were only able to put up, 3 touchdowns? I believe they only scored 21 points.
Right.
Not sure if you saw that. Did your numbers have anything from that game in Laramie last week, Ed?
Yeah, it's just I saw a little bit of the game. It seemed like a particularly slow game. Not a lot of possessions for either team. I know we had we talked about that game last week. And yeah, I don't want to take too much away from one game. We actually took Hawaii against the side against UCLA. Did not win that game, but that was a game in which Hawaii should have scored more points based on the efficiency that they gained yards at. I think Hawaii is an over team. I really like this situation with another over team in Colorado State. And I think you get this effect when the offenses are scoring, and it's particularly when they can score quickly, you end up getting more possessions in the game as well. You'll see that a lot in the Oklahoma State Texas Tech game, which I think is at 81 or whoever knows where that is. But I think when you get two teams that can really score, you end up possibly having even more possessions, which leads to more points, and I like the over in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like the over in this one too, in Hawaii. Late Saturday night, it will be a fun one to watch. But Ed, where can everybody find your work and on Twitter?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at the Power Rank, and then on the internet at thepowerrank.com. And please sign up for my free email list. So what I do every week is I send a sample of my member predictions. So these are my best predictions that I usually say for paying members of the site. But you can get a free sample by signing up for the email newsletter. Go to thepowerrank.com.
All right. He's Ed Feng. I'm Drew Martin. We'll be back next week with another Man vs. Machine. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.